Let me look out into the Zoom world. We had a little trouble starting our recording this morning, but we seem to have that rolling. Let me try to see if we're in and
The
out.
listening room is presenting Rod McDonald on Friday evening at 7 p.m. at the Holly Springs Community Center. For more information, you can check the UU View or check directly with Robbie Greenberg. We ask that you also check the UU View for opportunities to be together. All events use this same Zoom link. Our fellowship is a light for liberal religion in the mountains that values diversity and the richness it brings to our community. Our celebration of diversity is reflected in the variety of our Sunday services. Today, we welcome Rachel Newcomb from Mainspring Conservation Trust with a service titled Stewarding the Forest, Farms, Waters, and Cultural Heritage of the Southern Blue Ridge. We hope today's service enriches your journey. Our opening words are from meditation teacher and community activist Shelley Tegelski, who founded Pandemic of Love in South Florida to bring people together in communities of care, supporting one another through the pandemic, hurricanes, and gun shootings. In any ecosystems, organisms all need each other, not just merely to survive, but in fact, to thrive. When they work together, when they cooperate, when they give and take, they actually do a lot better than merely just surviving. I think that points to a lot of what we can do as human beings. The communities that thrive are the ones that work together. Our chalice lighting is by Lisa Doge. Why a flaming chalice, the question comes. It's the cup of life, we answer, a cup of blessings overflowing, a cup of water to quench our spirit's thirst, a cup of wine for celebration and dedication, a flame of truth, the fire of purifications, oil for anointing and healing, out of chaos, fear, and horror. Thus was the symbol crafted a generation ago. So may it be for us in these days of sorrow, uncertainty, and challenge, and a light to warm our souls and guide us home. Our opening hymn this morning is number 194, Faith is a Forest.
Doubts play and hide. Insight can hear the still small voice deep inside. Web of life, may this thread I weave strengthen commitment to all I believe. Vision be my guide as I seek my way. Lead me into this tender day. Speak through me in all I do and say. Seeds of both meek and strong are scattered in it. Dignity shines undimmed by bigotry's glare. Web of life, may this thread I weave help me bear witness to all I believe. mercy be my guide as I seek my way. Lead me into this tender day. Speak through me, in all I do and say.
Our offering words this morning. We say in our fellowship that the offering is a sacrament of the free church. What we mean by that is we believe it's a blessing to be able to govern and support our religious community ourselves, to make possible by our generosity everything we dream of and do to live out our shared values. We are so grateful for this and commit together to ensure the funds we gather collectively do a greater good for ourselves and our world than we could have done alone. All gifts of time, talent, and treasure are deeply appreciated. Our offertory is 123, Spirit of Life.
Volume, just turn on the volume. All right.
Dedication of our gifts. Gifts given in love and hope, continuous cycle of love and hope. This morning, we're delighted to welcome Rachel Newcomb from Mainspring. As the Conservation Outreach Associate, Rachel leads the outreach efforts for Mainspring, including events and volunteer coordination. She also assists with education programs, communications, and stewardship endeavors. Rachel grew up in Leicester, North Carolina on a horse rescue farm, but was fortunately raised outside of the barn too. Spending the majority of her youth outdoors adventuring in the creeks and woods, she developed a deep appreciation for the natural environment. In 2015, she obtained a BA in Environmental Studies and Public Policy at William Smith College. After receiving her undergraduate degree, she served 2 terms as an AmeriCorps member at a community farm in Knoxville, Tennessee, and a food bank in Charleston, South Carolina. In 2019, Rachel earned her master's in environmental policy and management at the University of Adelaide in South Australia. Since returning from the other side of the globe, she is happy to be back in the Western North Carolina mountains. Rachel is an avid snow skier and traveler. She also enjoys fitness, trail riding, and using her French language skills. She just came back from a hike to be with us this morning. The title of her message, Mainspring Conservation Trust, Stewarding the Forests, Farms, Waters, and Cultural Heritage of the Southern Blue Ridge. Please join me in welcoming Rachel Newcomb.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for inviting me here. I'm very happy to be here today. Is everyone able to see the presentation? Yes, we got it. Yay. All right. Well, this is an exciting year for us at Mainspring. This is our 25th anniversary that we've been around. So there's not a better time for me to be here to speak with y'all today. So next slide, please. Jude? I can't see him yet. Okay. So our mission at Mainspring is to conserve the forests, farms, waters, and cultural heritage of the Southern Blue Ridge region. That there is a photo of our staff. We have actually gained a couple new staff members in the time since that photo was taken. So we are now 13 folks. And next slide, please. Something that makes our land trust unique is that we are an accredited land trust. Not all land trusts across the country are accredited. So that means that we follow certain best practices to ensure that all of the conservation work that we are doing is up to a certain standard, and that we are following those best practices. So there are more than 1,000 member land trusts supported by more than 200,000 and 4.6 million members nationwide. There are many, many groups like ours across the country, but what makes ours so unique is the wonderful geographical region that we're in. We are a nonprofit, so some folks hear the word trust and that gets confusing. But yeah, we are very not-for-profit. Part of my role is to work in fundraising and to garner more support for the programs and projects that we're working on. Next slide, please. So some of you might have heard of us and just didn't know about that because we were originally founded as Land Trust for the Little Tennessee. Can I get a show of hands of people here who are familiar with that? Yay. So yeah, that was back in 1997. And in 1999, the very first project was completed. So we've been around here for some time, but in 2012, the Little Tennessee Watershed Association merged with LTLT, and that really was a really big and important move because in addition to the land work that we were doing to protect the view sheds and the valleys and the beautiful places around this region, we added in the work of stream restoration and aquatic science and protection. And then in 2016, we became Mainspring, and that was because we were no longer just protecting the Little Tennessee watershed, we were also protecting the Hiwassee as well. So next slide, please. We have 16 people on our board of directors and an operating budget that might seem large, but with all of the costs that are incurred with the amount of work that we do and the staff that we have, we're always trying to grow that. Next slide, please. You might be seeing that our core program areas now are land, water, and cultural heritage. So another important unique element of our land trust work compared to other land trusts across North Carolina and in other parts of the country is that we have so many very significant cultural heritage sites in this region. We work very closely with the EBCI, or the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians, to preserve and conserve land and return land to them that was theirs to begin with long before any of our ancestors came to this region. So that is a really important element of and a driving force of the decisions that we make and how we prioritize which projects are more a high priority project to bring our resources to. Next slide, please. So this is a big map of our service region, and we definitely need to update this because the dots on this are no longer, this was back in 2017. But it's a really good map to show the region that we cover. We work in the 6 westernmost counties of Western North Carolina, and in addition, parts of Rabun County, Georgia, you'll see there on the map. That is because that is where the headwaters of the Little Tennessee River begin. And the headwaters of a watershed are really where it's the most important to protect because the health of the headwaters is going to determine the health of the rest of the waterway. And you can also see that this map really reflects our history because most of the project markings here are in the Little Tennessee watershed. And as many of you might know, the rivers that cover this region that we live in actually flow from south to north. So when you're looking at this, you know, the headwaters are in Dillard, but then flow northward. And the same goes for the Hiwassee River as well. Next slide, please. This map is important too because those blue highlighted areas are our conservation focused regions, and that has been determined through very detailed overview and research on the conservation values of different parts of the region. So inside those blue blob areas, those have been determined because there are either really high species of concern, different threatened aquatic species or terrestrial species, also different plant species as well that require protection. And then of course also the cultural heritage elements are included in how we decide that. So there's obviously, when you're looking at this map, there's so much land, and you'll notice that the darker green land, that most of that is national forest, and we work really closely with many partners, including the U.S. Forest Service and the North Carolina Forest Service, to transfer ownership of land that we protect. It's not in our best interest to hold on to the land that we work with landowners to obtain, because as only a staff of 13, there's no way we'd be able to handle the monitoring and the stewardship of that much property. So the great thing about working and having these really great partnerships with the Forest Service and the Wildlife Resources Commission is they have the ability to protect that and the resources to regularly monitor that. So we're kind of the middle man in obtaining the important pieces of land that then connect to these bigger fragments of land. And that's a really big determinant factor in how we determine which pieces of land to conserve as well. If there's something that's backing up to Forest Service or National Forest, the conservation values for that really go up because that just adds additional habitat to other species that live in that area. Next slide, please. So yeah, the main thing that we do, and that most people know that land trusts do, is conserving land. So the way that we do this is by working with landowners in a completely voluntary way. Usually folks are interested in working with us if they have a tract of land that's usually in the 20 acres or above area in amount. And it is a benefit to the landowner because they receive tax breaks on putting their property in an easement. And one of my favorite things about why I work at Mainspring is because after that land has been conserved and it has been legally written on that deed that that's what is going to be, it is very, very hard to overturn that. So unlike other different types, there's other groups that will work to put easements on properties such as soil and water districts. They play an important role in their niche. But the important thing about what we do is that after it's conserved, it's really going to be conserved in perpetuity. And so that means from generations down the road. And so the reason that many folks want to work with us is if they have, a really nice piece of property and they want to leave it to their kids, but they're not sure if down the road they might want to develop that or, turn it into, a subdivision or build other homes on it. The positive thing about putting it in easement is that no matter what, whose hands it gets turned into in the future, that easement goes along with the property. So when we conserve something, it's going to be conserved very far into the future, it feels really good to know that. Another element of the work that we do is stream restoration. And you might see a picture of one of our recent projects on that. And the reason that work is so important and connected to conserving the land is because the conservation values of a property are very impacted by the presence of water. If there is a stream or creek or branch flowing on a property, the different species present will definitely be a lot higher from the presence of water. And really a lot of the land that we conserve is surrounding different pieces of property. And you can look at that, especially along the Little Tennessee River. A lot of our priority projects are based around the river because the alternative of having development very close to rivers can have a very negative impacts downstream. And another element of our work is youth environmental education. We have a environmental educator on our staff, and every summer, well, and throughout the whole year, he works to get school groups out into the river. He does snorkeling trips. So if anybody here knows anybody that works in the school and might be looking for ways to get kids out into nature, definitely contact me after this, and I'd love to set you up and with him and give you more information on how I can share what we do and get more kids involved, because really the next generation is so important because they're the ones that are going to be taking care of this land and the waters. So getting them, having them have that exposure from a young age is really what helps found those ideas about why it's an important resource to protect into the future. And yes, the other fourth element of the main work that we do is cultural heritage work. So next slide, please. Some of you might have noticed that we have a very large mound in town, the Nikwasi Mound. Show of hands for anyone who's familiar with that. It's kind of hard to miss, but actually you'd be surprised by the number of folks who don't realize that's what that is. And so that kiosk that has recently been installed, we worked with the Nikwasi Initiative and the tribe to put that there. And this map on this slide is really cool because this is a cultural and heritage corridor. So we're just really well situated in an area where we have so many different Cherokee sites and so many different mounds. We're in an area of the Cherokee geography that is known as the Middle Towns. And so from Nikwasi Mound, there's the Watauga Mound that follows that going up the river, and different sites all the way up to Gadua, which is of course in Bryson City. And so it's just really special and really important that we're doing all that we can to protect the land surrounding these mounds because they have not been protected in the past. And the reason why the Nikwasi Mound is so big is it's one of the only mounds that was not located on farmland because those mounds had been plowed over for generations and generations. And even the Nikwasi Mound is much larger than it appears because there is so many layers of filled dirt that have been brought into the town of Franklin over many, many years. So there's a lot of it that's under the ground that we don't see, but these mounds remain protected and undisturbed, and they were the sites of council houses for the Cherokee people. Next slide, please. So we also, although most of the property that we work to obtain, we then put in protection in other federal agency hands or state agencies. We do own some properties that are available to public access at any time. Some of you might have been to Tessantee Bottom Land Preserve. That was our very first flagship property that was conserved back in 1999. It's about a little over 60 acres, and we're hopefully adding on to it soon as well. And you can go there with your family and bring your dogs or go hiking, have fun along the river there. We also have Gibson Bottoms. Has anyone heard of that property? It's located on Sanderstown Road. I bring my dog there all the time. She loves running in the open field and going up in the woods, and it's a really nice stretch along the riverfront. We also have our Queen Branch property, and that is really exciting because in a couple of weeks we're having a trail opening for a mobility impaired trail. So we are just putting the finishing touches on that. June 22nd is the opening date, and I can give anyone information on that. We just finished constructing a bridge at one of our most recent volunteer days, and that was really exciting. We got this really big bridge put up in just a day because we had so much help. Cowie View is a property very close to Queen Branch, up on 28 as well, and that's a really great place to view the Cowie Mound, which is owned by the tribe. And you can view it across the river, and there's a really nice informative kiosk that details the history of that area and why that mound is especially important. And we also have a public access property in Cherokee County called the Welch Farm. And I highly suggest anyone who hasn't been there to make a day of it and to go out there and visit. It's all along the river, so it's very flat, easy to access terrain, so really little kids can go and enjoy it as well. And you can go fishing there, and that's a great place to go walk and spend the day. It's in Marble, so it's in between Murphy and Andrews. Next slide, please. So there are a lot of myths around conservation, and especially land trusts, and I love to debunk some of those. Some folks, for good reason, have come across the idea that conservation is not good for the economy, that it takes taxes away that otherwise would be being paid, if the land was in a subdivision or a housing development of some kind. But actually, what has been shown in a study that was done recently or over the last few years is that in most cases that the county and city expenditures that are required to service housing and developments and homes are actually, those costs outweigh the amount of money that's brought in from the taxes. So, and of course, most people who live here know that tourism is such a big part of why people come to this region, and how those dollars are so important. People come here to trout fish, and they come here to hike, and we need to protect the places where people like to recreate like that, because that's a big part of maintaining our town and bringing folks here to visit in the right way. Another myth is that land trusts don't agree with any development or think that development just shouldn't happen, but that couldn't be farther from the truth, because of course our board members and staff need places to live too. We can't all just be camping in the woods. So we really believe in development happening in the right place and done the responsible way. We want to protect the view shed, so we don't want a big hotel built on top of a mountain like that has happened in other towns around this region, because that impacts the whole view shed area. But in places where there's already development, it wouldn't make sense to protect land, in the middle of town. Well, the Greenway is a good example of a way that works, but it wouldn't make sense to have a large piece of land protected where there's already development happening. So we do support that. We get 70% of our funding from private donors, and only the rest of our funding comes from federal grants and foundations, but really we really rely on the folks who believe in our mission and our work to continue doing what we're doing. And some conservation trusts and land trusts are involved in advocacy. We don't do any of that, so we are a completely bipartisan organization who works with anybody. We have another organization that y'all might have heard about, Mountain True. They are kind of a counterpart, and they cover the advocacy of this region, so that's a good group to seek if you do want to get involved in any kind of advocacy. Next slide, please. So there's lots of ways to get involved if you're interested in learning about more or joining our community. We have about 90 active volunteers. So I am in charge of our volunteer program, and it's something I especially love because the folks that have been volunteering with us, some since our inception and some that have just joined over the last year, regularly show up to our bi-monthly volunteer days, which we have every other Thursday. That is done with our volunteer team in the stewardship program. So our stewardship team, which is comprised of 2 people, is responsible for maintaining our public access properties. So usually our work days are out at one of the properties that we own doing work, but sometimes we have a new exciting project or other independent work that we need volunteers to do on their own time as well. So there's lots of different opportunities there. We also have an aquatic biomonitoring program that is just done in the summer, so that has just begun a couple weeks ago with our senior scientist, Dr. Bill McClarney, if some of y'all have heard of him. He's still working very hard, and our biomonitoring program runs from mid-May until mid-August. And we need folks who are interested in going out in the river for a few hours and helping him count fish species and other aquatic species in our rivers. So if that's something you're interested in too, I can let you know about that. And we also need volunteers to help us. We have several volunteers who work just to send us really great pictures, because we need really great photos for our different publications that we do and different social media work that we are doing. So that's really helpful. There's really so many different ways to get involved. So I can let you know if there's, even if we love hearing about folks that contact us with an idea of how they want to help, and maybe it's something we haven't thought of before. So we love getting outside the box with that. Another way that you can get involved is speaking up for clean water and good land management. And we found that really the most impactful stuff that can be done to further conservation in our communities is really just talking to your neighbors or other people you know that maybe are following some of those myths or just haven't learned more about what the exact practices of conservation look like. So that really just makes a big difference to have those conversations with people you know. And also just being a good steward to your property is a good way to get involved. And if you have land, or even not much land at all, but there's always something that you can do, whether you live on 20 acres or a fourth of an acre, to support local pollinator species or other aquatic species. And so we're always happy to have people come in the office if you want to ask us questions or give us a call. We're very open to that. So next slide, please. So now I can answer any questions if there's still time for that, but if not, I highly suggest that all of you find us on Facebook at Mainspring Conservation Trust if you're not already following us there. And if you do have an Instagram, we're really trying to build up that platform, so please find us there at Mainspring Conserves, and we keep both of those pages really updated, in addition to our website with the different types of events we have going on. That's my job, is to plan all the events, so you can also find that on our website, and we always have something going on, so there's all different ways to get involved with our work. So I want to thank you all for your time and attention this morning. Thank you so much.
Let's begin if there's any questions here in the sanctuary.
Sure. Yes.
I have some land that I would be interested in talking to you about. I do not have a computer, and I wondered, do you have any kind of written material that I could have?
Yes, we have so much. The question was if there was any written material for anyone interested in donating or learning how their land might be a good fit for conservation, and we have a lot of that at the office. So you can either call and schedule a time to come in, or really just drop by, and we can. So our office is located at 557 East Main Street. So we are actually right across from the Niquosi Mound, if you're familiar with what that is, or right where 828 Cafe is. We're right across the street there. Yes.
Next to Frog.
Yeah, we're right next to Frogs too. So some folks come in thinking like, oh, this is the Greenway place.
Great partner.
Yeah, and they do really great work because they their work is focused on the Greenway.
Do
So
We have a question from the Zoom world, if we can. Penny, go ahead and
Let's
unmute
wait just
yourself.
1 second for Zoom. Don, you want to go ahead?
You said 70% of your contributions are made by individuals.
yes, sir.
What portion of that comes from the locality as opposed to nationally?
Well, most of our supporters are based local, either in the counties we serve or in adjacent counties. Some folks who are major donors of ours are just small donors, have either lived their whole lives, or some people have just moved here in recent years and just really realize how special and important it is to continue the work to protect pieces of property that might otherwise become developed. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The rest of that is from grants?
Yes, about 30%, well, 28% is from different federal grants, and only 2% is from different foundations. Mm-hmm.
Our question, Jude, we have a question from Zoom.
We do. We're not getting video feed from the lectern, but Penny has a question from Zoom.
Yes, thank you. I have a question about the cultural aspects. Do you folks have anything to do with Judicolor rock?
Yes, so we did not play a direct hand in the conservation of that, but we have good relationships with the adjacent property owners who help, keep an eye out on that property to make sure that it's being taken care of and there's not any suspicious activity happening.
It's very
But yeah,
impressive.
that is a really important property.
Anybody who hasn't seen that needs to go see it.
Yes, that's a great day trip out to Jackson County if you're looking for somewhere that's not too far, but you want to learn a little bit about some of the Cherokee history in our area. I'd highly suggest going to Judaculla Rock. Any other questions?
I read recently that the French Broad may be the oldest river in the world.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Fascinating, or at least one of the oldest rivers of the world. So,
well, I guess that would make sense because this, our forests and our mountains here are some of the oldest in the world. So that would make sense.
So fabulous. Rachel, thank you so much. It's been a real treat to have you with us.
Thank you, Mary.
Our closing hymn is number 21, For the Beauty of the Earth, done by our own Penny Brewster and Sandy Erickson.
I'm getting there. Hold on.
For the beauty of the earth, for the splendor of the skies, for the love which from our birth over and around us lies. Source of all, to thee we raise this our hymn of grateful praise. For the joy of ear and eye, for the heart and mind's delight, for the mystic harmony, linking sense to sound and sight. Source of all, to thee we raise this our hymn of grateful praise.
We will now pause our recording for joys and concerns.
Recording in progress.
Our closing words are by Reverend Dr. Richard Gilbert. As we leave this community of the Spirit, may we remember the difficult lesson that each day offers more things than we can do. May we do what needs to be done, postpone what does not, and be at peace with what we can be and do. Therefore, may we learn to separate that which matters most from that which matters least of all. Extinguishing the chalice, we extinguish this flame, but carry with us the light of vision and the warmth of hope. The world calls us to live with depth, meaning, and purpose. Together may we go forth with commitment, courage, and love. Our closing circle and covenant. When we're together, we circle our round sanctuary and join hands for our closing circle and covenant. For now, those in the sanctuary may choose to join hands with those near them, and for those on Zoom, we'll join in spirit as we recite our covenant together. Love is the spirit of this fellowship, and community is its goal. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. So may it be. Thank you for joining us today. Next Sunday, we will welcome Rod McDonald for sermon and song. The service is now ended. We invite those in the sanctuary to gather for coffee hour, and those on Zoom are welcome to continue with conversation time. Thank you all.